These are the 9 best books that I read in 2018. I've split this video up into 3 sections. Some of the books are new releases because I figured you guys would want to know about those, which books came out in 2018 that are most worth buying. Some of them are backlist titles that I personally read and loved, and 2 of the books are rereads. The first book is one that I talk about in almost every video on my channel, and that is A Girl Like That by Tanis Bethina. This is set in Saudi Arabia. It's about a teenage girl who dies right at the beginning, and she is someone who has been gossiped about throughout her teenage years. We learn a lot about her through other characters, but also through flashbacks. And it's very, very hard-hitting and upsetting, but I loved it nonetheless. I thought it was wonderfully written and a really, really strong debut. The second book is Girl Made of Stars. This one is about a girl whose brother rapes his girlfriend, who is also her best friend, and how she and her family deal with that. It's quite a difficult read, but I thought it was beautifully written and very, very respectful, and it tackles rape culture really well, I think. It made me think a lot because I have no idea how I would handle it if one of my brothers did something like that, and how it would affect our family and how it would affect my best friend and our friendship group. Then there's Record of a Spaceborn Few by Becky Chambers, which is fantastic. It's her latest book set in the same universe as The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and her second book, A Closed and Common Orbit. I think this one might be my favourite of her books. Her books just keep getting better and better, and I just loved all of the characters in this one, and the emotions that she evoked in me were incredible. The final one in this list that is a 2018 release is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I read this one as an audiobook, and that is definitely how you should approach this book. It's about a girl called Sadie whose sister is murdered, and so she goes on kind of a revenge mission across the country to find her sister's murderer. And it is told so well. It follows the point of view of a reporter as he follows Sadie's story, and also from Sadie's point of view as she is trying to find the murderer. It is very emotional and very well told, and honestly, this is one of the best books I've ever read, and it's also one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to because it's told in the style of a podcast, and it's got a full cast of characters, and it was just brilliant. I can't recommend it enough. The next 3 books are backlist titles. 2 of them are by Becky Chambers because I only discovered her this year, but I had to include her in this list because I love her books so much. So those 2 are The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and A Closed and Common Orbit. I can't think of anyone who writes a better universe than Becky Chambers. She writes amazing characters and dialogue, and she has put so much thought into this universe that she has created, and it covers like real life topics really, really well, but in a spacey sci-fi kind of way, and I can't recommend it enough. Her books are just fantastic, so if you're hesitant to pick them up, I think you should just go ahead and do it because her writing is phenomenal, and also I think non-sci-fi fans might enjoy them as well. Then there's Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is an adult contemporary. It's set in this suburban town full of rich people. There's a mother and a daughter who move into this rented property. It's rented out by this rich family, and they all get to know each other. Stuff goes down. It kind of shows how a tight-knit rich community treats outsiders and people who like wrong them in their eyes. There's also the issue of an abandoned Chinese baby who is adopted by a rich white family who have always wanted kids but aren't able to have their own. And when the baby's mother wants her back, the question comes up as to whether they should have to give her back, or if this white American family should be allowed to continue raising a Chinese child. It's a very hard book to explain, but it is amazing and I loved it so much. I understand where all the hype is coming from. And then finally the next 2 books were rereads, and I loved them then when I read them years ago, and I loved them again this year. The first one is The Martian, which I listened to as an audiobook. I just love Mark Watney so much. He's one of my favourite characters. This book is hilarious and emotional. Basically, it's about a guy called Mark Watney who gets stuck on Mars. It's about how he survives there and whether or not anyone can get back and save him. There is a lot of sciencey stuff and math stuff, but Mark Watney narrates it in such a hilarious way that it doesn't really matter if you don't do science or maths because you'll get it, you will understand. And finally, the last incredible book I read in 2018 was The Secret Garden. I read this for the first time years and years ago when I was a child, and I was a bit worried that I wouldn't love it again this time, but I did. This is a classic about a girl called Mary who grew up in India, but her family dies from cholera, and so she goes to live with her uncle in England. She's a bit of a brat, but eventually she starts to become a better person due to the people around her. She also makes other people better people as well, and it's just a really, really lovely book, and I can't recommend it enough. If you're not really into classics, I would say this is a good one to start with. So those are the best books that I read in 2018. Let me know what your top 3 were in the comments below. If you have read any of these or are interested in any, also let me know about that. I will speak to you all in my next video. Bye!